revolution and fear of revolution, and era-defining advances in science, technology, and culture. All the while, the specter of the cataclysmic war that ended only months ago continues to hang over the world. Spring 1919 is what you can very much call a real contradiction of the old and the new. This is Between Two Wars Season 2, a chronological summary of the interwar years where we cover the zeitgeist, the culture, the technology, the art, the sports, and much more in the era when, for better or for worse, humanity ushered in modern times. I'm Indy Neidell. The headlines that dominate the papers in April, May, and June 1919 are still full of war, whether new ones or the world one that recently passed. Eastern Europe is locked in conflict, with continued civil war in Russia and wars of independence on its peripheries. Westward, Soviet republics are declared in both Bavaria and Hungary, although both will be short-lived. Turkey now also enters into its own independence war to take back territory carved up by the victorious Allied powers. The Treaty of Versailles, one of the 5 treaties that officially end the First World War, is signed this spring. Benito Mussolini founds the Italian fascist movement in Italy, and the Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, which will be named Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, NSDAP, was just founded over the winter. The Spanish flu continues to rage on, killing tens of thousands of people a day worldwide. There is also a notable individual death this spring I'd like to mention. You know how movie stars are often associated with sunglasses? Stars wearing them has been a thing since before the war. This is done partly to hide any red eyes, but also because their eyes get really light sensitive from the hours and hours of working in front of tungsten lights. One man we can thank for the modern versions of such eyewear is Sir William Crooks. He passes away on April 4th in his late 80s. Crooks invented a 100% ultraviolet blocking sunglass lens. He also discovered thallium and was a pioneer of the vacuum tube, which is essential to the development of radio, TV, early computers, radar, and sound recording. He invented the Crooks tube back in 1875, which transmits cathode rays. Well, in which cathode rays were actually discovered, and it was a Crookes tube that was used by William Röntgen to discover X-rays. That is a pretty outsized technological footprint for one man to leave behind. Of all that technology associated with Crookes, it is the world of film that is booming just this year. Modern films do not only reflect the headlines, they also provide new visions of the future. But they are also used to come to terms with the horrors of the Great War. Take, for example, Abel Gance's famous silent film, J'accuse. Released in April, it weaves classic romantic drama with the modern horrors of war. The main character, Jean Diaz, becomes so shell-shocked that he goes insane. He escapes from hospital and flees to his village, where he gathers the inhabitants around him and tells them about a dream he had. He speaks of how he was chased by an army of the dead, which emerged from a huge graveyard, some limping, some blind, some wrapped in bandages. They marched through the country roads of France, back to their homes, to see if their sacrifice had not been in vain. The film ends the following day with Jean reciting a poem to the sun, condemning it for having stood by as the war unfolded beneath it, after which he falls down dead with the light setting upon him. The Army of the Dead scene is made more harrowing when you consider that the extras playing the dead are actual soldiers from the Western Front. Gantz filmed the scene while the war was still going on, and they had to return to the fighting after they had played their parts. Many of them have joined the actual dead. Technology from that war is already beginning to break boundaries post-war that will seriously affect civilian life. From May 8th to May 27th, a Curtiss NC-4, a U.S. Navy flying boat commanded by Albert Reid, makes the first transatlantic flight from Rockaway Naval Air Station to Newfoundland, the Azores, and finally Lisbon. On June 14th and 15th, a Vickers Vimy with John Alcock and Arthur Brown aboard makes the first non-stop transatlantic flight from Newfoundland to Ireland. Science itself is also advancing. On May 29th, English astronomer Arthur Eddington shows German physicist Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity in action. This is basically the argument that space and time are distorted by massive objects such as the sun, which is felt as gravity. In the 21st century, this is a pretty mainstream concept in theoretical physics. But in 1919, not so much. Eddington is a fan of it and leads an expedition to the island of Principe off the west coast of Africa to witness a solar eclipse. There, he takes several pictures which reveal light from stars shifting or bending when passing near the sun. This proves the theory of general relativity, and when Eddington publishes the findings next year, it will rocket Einstein to fame. And though much of Einstein's home country is still locked in political conflict, the seeds for new modern artistry are being laid in Germany. On April 25th, the Bauhaus School is founded in Weimar. It is founded by Walter Gropius with the idea of creating a total work of art in which all the different arts are represented. Bauhaus will become one of the most influential movements in modern design, art, and architecture, with thousands of Bauhaus buildings built throughout Western Europe, the US, and Canada. It stresses rationality, functionality, in fact, a harmony between function and design, a lack of ornamentation, simplified forms, and the idea that mass production is not at odds with artistic spirit. It is directly influenced by modernism, and its manifesto says that the aim of all creative activity is building. Though interestingly enough, it will not actually offer architecture courses until well into the 1920s. Einstein is from a Jewish family, and further east, anti-Semitism is running up against the current trend of anti-Bolshevism. On April 5th, 75 Jewish residents meet in a Zionist center in Pinsk, not that far from Brest-Litovsk, and recently taken from the Red Army by the Polish Army. According to eyewitnesses, the meeting is simply about the distribution of American relief aid. But the local Polish commander hears that it's a Bolshevik cell looking to organize an uprising. He detains 35 people, all prominent members of the local community, and has them executed by firing squad against the walls of the cathedral. Bolshevism, well, communism in general, is still very much in the news, and fear of communism even more so. This only grows after the first Congress of the Comintern was held in March in Moscow. The Comintern, the Communist International, also known as the Third International, is formed by Vladimir Lenin and his Russian Bolshevik Party to represent the global workers' movement, usher in world communism, and replace the Second International. That organization was much more of a broad church containing reformist socialists alongside revolutionary ones. It became discredited during the Great War when many of its member parties moved to support their respective nations rather than the international proletariat. The Third International is much more radical in its composition, founded with the priority of exporting the Russian Revolution throughout the world. On the opening day of the March Congress, Lenin tells the gathered delegates, "Comrades, our gathering has great historic significance. It testifies to the collapse of all the illusions cherished by bourgeois Democrats, not only in Russia, but in the most developed capitalist countries of Europe. In Germany, for example, civil war is a fact. Even though the bourgeoisie are still raging, even though they may kill thousands more workers, victory will be ours. The victory of the worldwide communist revolution is assured." Lenin is the dominant figure here, despite Grigory Zinoviev being the chairman of the executive committee. Under Lenin's guidance, the Comintern will share his principles of democratic centralism, freedom of discussion, unity of action. So the parties make decisions democratically, but once made, uphold those decisions with complete disciplined unity. Despite the radical program and optimistic propaganda, the Comintern doesn't really have the means to spread revolution. Soviet Russia, pretty much the only viable communist state in the world, is still battling for its existence against the whites and the others in the Civil War and the Allied powers, so it can hardly provide tangible support to fellow movements beyond its borders. Still, the rousing words of Lenin and other communist leaders cause a great deal of anxiety in the rest of the world, especially in America, where a Red Scare has begun. This intensifies even more now in late April, when dozens of bombs are discovered to have been mailed to American politicians, newspaper editors, and business leaders, including the Attorney General and John D. Rockefeller. The first to receive one is Mayor Ole Hansson, who we saw last time, and who is currently known by many as the savior of Seattle for his action in the Seattle General Strike. However, he's not actually in his office, and his assistant notices how a strange fluid seems to be leaking from the package. That strange fluid is acid designed to eat through blasting caps to set off the explosion. At first, it doesn't cause much panic. Hansson is a pretty obvious target of any and all radically minded Americans. But the next day, the housekeeper of Georgia Senator Thomas W. Hardwick has her hands blown off when she opens the bomb. It's clear a coordinated attack is underway. But the distinctive wrapping of the bombs means the rest can be easily intercepted. In fact, many of them had been set aside for insufficient postage, which seems to me to be a big flaw in a postal bomb scheme. And sort of the first thing you'd sort out, right? I'm right here, right? The first thing you'd sort out if you're gonna send a bunch of bombs in the postage is make, innocuous looking packages and put on the correct postage, right? That's a big deal, right? But that's not what they did. Okay, but what do I know? That's what they did. Newspapers have a field day upon the plot's discovery, adding to the sense of hysteria. The Chicago Tribune advises readers to call the police bomb squad if any box comes through the mail, and papers nationwide call for the deportation or even the hanging of every known anarchist. For a while, it's not clear who sent the bombs, leading to fears that this is the work of a well-organized radical terror cell. Riots across the states also flare up on May Day, especially in Cleveland, Boston, and New York, leading many to believe that a revolution is just around the corner. Now, I will talk more about these bombs and those responsible next time. But while there are those communist revolutions in Bavaria and Hungary, and the new war in Turkey, the rest of the world is spared any such large-scale revolutions. Well, it is for the moment, as spring blossoms into summer. It is a world being pushed beyond recognition, as technology is revolutionizing everyday lives, and yes, actual revolution does seem to be on the point of spreading everywhere. But the clean lines of Bauhaus and the scientific discoveries of Einstein and Crooks point towards a new future. But what will that future be like? Very little is certain anymore, and only time will tell whether the army of the dead really did die for something or did not. If you would like to learn more about the Turkish War of Independence as it unfolded, then check out our Season 1 double-length episode on that, and you can click right here for it. Our TimeGhost Army member of the week is Zantoran, which is a great name because it starts with X. It is the TimeGhost Army that funds all of our content. So please join us at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. And do not forget to subscribe. And apropos sunglasses, Andrew McMahon said, "The whole world, myself included, seem to have one thing in common. We're just a crowd of people who don't really fit in anywhere, attempting to convince one another that we do. I guess I'll put on my sunglasses and pretend, just like everyone else, that I too belong here. And apropos movie stars, bottoms up, darling."